What's this? 13, right? Welcome to episode 13 of Coffee with the Johns. Well, I kind of forgot how long we've been doing this. Yes, we have a lot going on. I mean, like always, there's always a lot of news. What happened?
Give me my camera. My speaker was on.
Always a lot of news going on. So we have more shutdowns coming down the line. We have, a lot of things going on with some states, some revolts going on. I think the common thread from all the stuff that I've been seeing this week is the lost confidence in our government.
What are you talking about? Full faith right here. This guy.
But I really feel like that's really what the common thread is.
Mutual assured destruction.
Yeah, it's let's kind of get into it. How's your week? How's your week been?
Oh, just fine and dandy. I try to. It's kind of hard. You do this. You do a show like this. You got to watch the news, and then you get stuck on some of these articles, and then you end up down rabbit holes of other places. And you're like, God, I got to get off this crap. You started listening to newscasts from one side, the news broadcasts from the other side, and it's like, they're all lying. No, they're all lying. It's like, there was fraud. No, there wasn't. It's like, oh, wow. Then you got what's going on in, was it Wayne County in Michigan, how they were going to certify the votes in Wayne County, but then last minute, some of the Republicans said they were receiving death threats to their family if they didn't certify, and they wound up not certifying the results. So now they're going to do, I don't know where that's going, but that was one of the lawsuits that Trump had, and they pulled yesterday because they finally decided they weren't going to certify the votes in Wayne County, which is where Detroit is. So
well, and then you also have Georgia came out pretty much saying, Biden won Georgia. Not Georgia's not coming out saying that. The news is coming out saying that Biden pretty much won Georgia. So
that Georgia released their official hand recount, and Biden still won by 12,000 votes or something like that.
Yeah,
I think. But that's what was crazy. I was looking last night. 5 million votes and only 12,000 split that difference. How tight of a race that was for something like that. And that's just what's crazy about it. But also, you look back to 2016, Trump won by 5% over Hillary Clinton. So they gained that much ground in Georgia.
Oh, in Georgia, he won by 5%.
Over 5% 4 years ago, and this year he lost.
Georgia's always been red, though?
Yeah, Georgia's been red. They haven't voted since Clinton in 1992 was the last time they voted blue. It's kind of like Arizona was 96 last time they voted blue. And now in 2020, 24 and 28 years later, they voted blue again. So
we're going to do a little bit of different format this time. Instead of going article by article, we're actually summarizing a lot of the stuff because it just bleeds over from one place to the next. We don't need to go by article. But let's start off with the COVID shutdowns, right? So we have, let's start with San Antonio. So the COVID-19 Community Response Coalition, apparently that's a thing. See, and people say that we have unemployment. Look at that. A whole coalition was created for COVID response. It said Tuesday, offered Bexar County Judge Nelson Wolf recommendations for bars in the community if positive rates are equal or exceed 10% for 2 consecutive weeks. And then we have our lovely mayor reported Monday that the area's positivity rate increased 1% since last week and is now at 9.4.
Well, there's controversy with that where there's other health professionals or I don't say health professionals, but leaders of Texas to say no, 10% positivity rate is not what you should be shooting. It should be the 15% hospitalization rate.
Yeah.
Were you listening? Okay, but now you have your Pennsylvania governor coming out with masks are required outside where it isn't possible to maintain at least a 6-foot distance from others, according to the order, and inside where people from multiple households are gathered, even if they can maintain a social distance. So even if you're across the room from each other, You got to wear a mask inside for Thanksgiving and stuff like that. And or it's just, you out your damn mind. Like, no. And a lot of people, they're pushing back on a lot of these things that they're just like, we're not doing they call it like the COVID fatigue. And they're all like pleading, please don't,
Right.
don't. We need to keep pushing through with this. But people are starting to be like, would rather take the risk when you got a 99.8% survival rate of getting sick. So you get sick, you get a cold.
Well, I mean, and that's kind of the stuff.
Yeah. Well, then it even comes down to where like they don't even follow it themselves. To where you got your. It's just you texted me like not too long earlier this week. It's like it's just too easy to make just to bag rag on this guy. Like again, California Governor Gavin Newsom puts out all those strict rules that we talked about last week, and but just a couple of days later, he is seen at a private dinner party in a closed room with four walls sided with like 10, 15 people for a private birthday party, not wearing masks. Not even not wearing masks. There weren't even masks in the pictures. Not like they were hanging around their ears. No, nobody had masks on at like this private high-end dinner party in the wine country outside of San Francisco. And apparently there's been a lot of backlash, and rightfully so. It's like, you're telling us we can't do all this stuff. You're taking all of our freedoms that we believe we actually have as a people to congregate and share time with each other. But now you're saying we can't do that, but yet you can go to private dinner parties and just live your life the way you want to do it. But yet we have to stay isolated and shut down from our families. Like, come on. I said audio is good, but side tone's still there. Lots of hiss. Barbera. Is it better now? We gotta wait 20 seconds now before anybody says anything, though. Gotta love technology.
We can hear John with noise, but can barely hear Joan. John Barr, good. It's always something, right?
It stopped.
Always something.
They're saying it stopped. Good. Talk, John.
What stopped? I've been talking. Everything's good.
Well, they're saying it's yours.
It's always
All right.
something. Always.
John, good. There we go.
And people always tell me, hey, how easy is it to start a podcast or do your? I'm like, oh yeah, go ahead.
Everyone says we're gonna make a recording studio. Like, all right,
Yeah,
have fun.
Good luck with that shit.
All
My
right.
God.
Well, it's that abuse you give to that microphone. You yell into it every time you talk. It's like, dude, you can talk
I don't
normally.
yell. I speak in all caps. There's a difference.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's moving forward. So we have San Antonio doing that. So there's pretty much rumors that they're gonna close down the bars again and limit the restaurants and all of that. And we're gonna get into more details on this, but just giving you a little rundown. Then we have Pennsylvania, like they're saying they want you to wear masks inside. They were even going as far as saying that they rather you not get with family during the holiday season. Just stay in your house.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't go out. Don't see other people. Just stay in your house. So, I would love to hear what you guys that are watching have to say. Are you going to stay in your house this holiday season, or are you going to hang out with friends and family? Then we have our lovely New York City. Being that I haven't lived in New York for a little over 7 years now. It still hurts me when I hear this dumb shit coming out of there. Like I still have love for the state, where it's like when I hear all this stupidity, it's like, oh my God. So, but anyway, on the heels of the closure of New York City public schools, officials warn that indoor dining and fitness facilities are likely to be next. So Mayor de Blasio is saying New York City will be in the orange zone. But declaring the city an orange zone is a geographic area with a positivity rate of 3% on a 7-day rolling average for 10 days, which will force such closures. But he cannot claim it. Only Cuomo can declare that. And de Blasio also said that it's more than likely in the next week or two, gyms and dining will close.
That's what's crazy is like here in Texas, we're talking about closing bars when you get a 10% positivity rate, but they're like, nope, 3% of how strict their stuff is there. And then you have Cuomo going out and arguing with news reporters and like berating them that saying, we're not closing any schools. We're not closing any schools. And then but minutes later, de Blasio comes out and says they're shutting down all New York City schools for in-class learning. It's like, my God. And then they come out with their Christmas tree. I don't know. You haven't seen it yet,
No.
but I'm just looking at whose headlines is Rockefeller Christmas tree in New York City gets mocked and compared to Charlie Brown. All you got to do is Google New York City Xmas tree, and it's like the photos that come up, and it's just like, wow, that is one sad looking tree. It is just like, wow.
So you guys can see what I'm looking at.
It's really just kind of like,
God,
man, this is supposed to be like, isn't this supposed to, like, you guys are from New York, isn't this supposed to be like the iconic thing of like Christmas time is like the Rockefeller Center area Christmas tree with all the lights and everything?
It's so iconic for us that with Val, every year we watch the Rockefeller lighting. They do a, kind of a ceremony, a party of it, and they have a lot of artists that come out, they're doing their Christmas music and all that.
Not this year though.
We always watch it, right? Because it's beautiful. And man, this is a really sad sight to see. Oh my God. So here, I'm hoping this one doesn't have pop-ups. But if you guys are watching, look at this. This is just embarrassing. Like, I mean, there's just no, of course, another pop-up. Jesus, every news site wants to charge you now. But it's just sad. It's like, where are the standards going? That's another thing that I've realized since this shutdown happened. I've noticed it first with food, right? You go to restaurants. I'm trying to support local mom and pop restaurants. The food has been garbage. Like, it's like they don't even try to. I'm looking at it. I'm like, look, guys, you have a lot less customers. Why the hell isn't the food coming out like amazing?
Well,
right?
yeah, you get the ingredients.
You have more time.
I mean, you have more time, but then like you look at it goes all the way back. It's the same thing for like lumber shortages. This goes all the way back to the farmers of how like supply chains were interrupted to where they were just dumping produce into the ocean because like they couldn't get it anywhere. Like all the supply chains were so jacked up that they couldn't move this stuff through. It just goes to show like how fragile our system can be with something like this, shutting things down, people getting laid off, and it just backlogs to where they might be taking more time, but the ingredients going in suck. Because they go back to the place to get the ingredients and they're like, yeah, we can't get it from our suppliers in time. By the time it gets to us, it's 4 days late than what it normally is, not anywhere near as fresh. You go to the supplier and they're like, well, yeah, the truckers aren't bringing it in from the fields as fast. And like, well, we can't harvest it as fast. So you have that huge supply chain issue all the way back, all the way across.
Bullshit. I'm looking at it as the quality. I'm talking about like I've gone places to eat breakfast and the bacon comes out like beef jerky. I'm going somewhere to, have pancakes, and the pancakes are like, I got to throw it against the wall and put a hole through it. You understand? Like, it's quality. It's not that, they're not getting the right ingredients. The chicken is under seasoned. No, it hasn't been that. It's been like overcooked. It's just the quality of the actual process.
Yeah.
Is gone down. And then you go and it's like everybody that's serving you has an attitude. It's like you're bothering most people. So I don't know, but it's actually funny here because Valeria talk about that New York pride stepping in. She says that is the worst fake news. The tree is still tied up, and they made it seem like they're really going to put a raggedy tree. So
time will tell.
She is all for that. This tree is going to look great when it's ready to go.
So I hope you're right, Val.
They spend enough
because,
tax dollars on it. They can like tape some leaves in there and like kind of do some glue in the middle of the night, or then they wrap it with lights so you can't see it.
Yeah.
So they can make it CGI on TV for it. So
Yeah, at least
nobody can conjugate to see it.
It's not like they're gonna have a lot of.
Nobody can go see it.
What's gonna happen for Times Square New Year's Eve? They're gonna most likely cancel it.
Yeah, they can't.
They already called it?
They've already canceled that stuff.
Only select people will be able to be there. Like,
Oh, I wonder how you become a select person there.
My God, the revenue New York is losing.
Lawrence Rutowski, New York has plenty of other issues than a tree.
but not issues that matter to me, LJ. You have different problems. So let's move forward with let's talk about that leadership 101 that you did.
Okay, so this is something that I found very interesting. And the headline was Leadership 101. 2 big state governors have no intention to join the panic party and lock things down. 2 of the largest Republican governed states you can count on being lockdown free according to their governors. As 45 of the 50 states across the country have seen coronavirus cases increase of at least 10% over the past week, many governors are choosing to return to lockdowns, while Texas Governor Abbott and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis are saying lockdowns are not in their plans. In a radio interview Thursday at 66 a.m. in Dallas, Abbott said, "We are not going to have any more lockdowns in the state of Texas. Our focal point is going to be working to heal those who have COVID and get them out of the hospital quickly, make sure they get back to their normal lives." In Florida, Governor DeSantis' office released a statement saying, "The governor will not lock down and hurt families who can't afford to shelter in place for 6 weeks, especially not for a virus that has a 99.8% survival rate." And that's a statement from the governor's office. And that's where it's like, it's good to see some of these other actually people coming out and throwing some of these statistics out to their people so they can make decisions for themselves. And you have South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. "We already know that lockdowns don't stop the spread of the virus. However, they destroy small businesses and jobs, and they make it difficult for families to put food on their table." And then you got California Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom has gone the opposite direction of his Republican counterparts, placing the majority of the state back into the highest level of lockdowns and coronavirus restrictions. To where everyone says, "Oh, we can't make this political." I don't know how you can't. When you got your states that that are more Republican, they're saying we're not doing this, and looking from a health and economic standpoint, to where like I agree 100% the way South Dakota governor says it. We already know lockdowns don't stop the spread of the virus. It's like the virus is still there. It might bring it down, but as soon as you open back up, people are going to happen. But when you combine it with the Florida governor saying it's a 99.8% survival rate, and then it's saying like it does nothing but it destroys small businesses and jobs and makes it difficult for families to put food on their table. 100%. To where I don't know how long some of these states, or how like California, how with their however many 55 million people or however many people live over there, like how are these people actually able to sustain? Do they have that much of a social programs that these people can eat? They shut down for 6 more weeks. New York, to where I don't get how they can justify this stuff. They're leading with the health thing, and I think it's a narrative coming back from the elections that they ran with that narrative. That's what they used to defeat Trump, and now they can't just let it go. They have to keep going with it, because then it seems that they're flip-flopping. They want Biden to be the one that saves the country from the virus, to where like they don't want it to be politicized, but it's like you're still running politics with this thing. Like you're not letting the economy open back up for something that's 99.8% survival rate and destroying jobs.
Don't you think it's something that we've talked about before, that it is sad to think about, but it's doubling down. I mean, they've, and by they, I do mean Democrats, because it has become a left and a right issue. The left is doubling down on, we cannot allow one person to die from COVID. Like that's the whole agenda, right? We cannot, one person's life is worth the whole economy, which is insane. I mean, honestly, to me, it's insane. I think, is one person's life worth, tanking the whole economy?
Well, that's one thing. Like we said last week, that if Chicago didn't shut down, of their 8.5 million people, 1,000 people could die. It's like Yes, but when you create that much massive poverty, because it shows like this just exacerbates poverty levels exponentially by taking income away from these people, especially in these high cost cities like Chicago, LA, New York, to where you take that from them like that. Yes, 1,000 people don't die from COVID, but now you have crime skyrocketing, you have shootings skyrocketing, and then you're defunding the police on top of that. You have so many things that it's like, okay, the headline 1,000 people could die from COVID, but what, the tens of thousands that die because of poverty levels and people just trying to survive don't matter either. But it's like, oh, but that's a different issue. That's a social issue. That's not anything to do with.
I don't know how accurate these numbers are. I mean, every place has their stats, but roughly 260,000 Americans have died. 260,000 Americans have died because of COVID. At a 350
million or
50
something
million
like that.
Americans, like, to me, it's like, I'm not making light of the situation. I'm not saying that people should die. I'm not saying any of that. What I'm saying is that it sucks, but the cure is literally worse than the actual disease.
Yeah.
At least what they think the cure is, because it's not even a money issue anymore, because what we have from like the Biden plan and all that coming up is they want to provide more stimulus. That's fine. Provide more stimulus.
I don't even call it stimulus at that point.
Well, I know,
like
but
they
want to give people more money just so that they don't have the financial strains, right? Let's cancel all bills for 2021. Cancel them all. Let's wait for the vaccine. The money is not the issue anymore. It's mental sanity that's the issue.
Yes.
People just don't want to be home anymore. And you're starting to see this across the country where you're kind of having, what do they call it, COVID fatigue?
Yeah.
And you're starting to have that. And it kind of leads into the next topic that I wanted to hit is the whole Thanksgiving thing. So in New York, you have sheriffs, which this was very interesting.
New York City, New York State?
New York. New York.
State. Okay.
Yeah, New York City is...
Well, I know, but for people not from New York, when you say New York,
are we talking
about New York
for
or New
people
York
not from New York, let me give you some geography lessons. New York is a lot more than the boroughs, okay?
What's
the boroughs is the bottom part. I'm not even going to go there.
It's like the very southeast corner of New York. It's like a pin drop.
It looks like a little turd coming out of New York because it's like pretty much what it's turning out to be. But don't get offended. But you have the rest of the state of New York. Sheriffs throughout the whole state have come out pretty much saying, screw what Cuomo wants. We are not going to enforce it.
Yeah.
We are not going to be going around. We have one sheriff that says, Sheriff Giardino. Yeah, Giardino, a Republican, questioned the constitutionality of Cuomo's order, adding, in good faith, we can't enforce it. They're like, don't feel a need to hide cars, cover with leaves, or walk 3 blocks so your house doesn't become a target of the government's executive order. So you're having, and these are sheriffs, like, it wasn't just one. These are sheriffs throughout the whole state in multiple areas coming out and saying, like, look, we are just not going to do it. You understand? Like, we're not going to enforce it. We have other issues to worry about. So they're all coming up saying that it's unconstitutional. One person, what was it? We're not going to be peeking through your windows, counting how many people.
I saw a video.
It says, listen, how many people are eating turkey, or how many, to see how many turkey or tofu eaters are present in a not so distant. Yeah, that got all screwed up. But tofu eaters, that shit was just funny to me.
Well, I saw a video on Facebook. It was I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was a Chevy Chase movie. It was like he's like home for the holidays. I don't know what it was, but it's a scene where they're all gathering around like their family and stuff like that, and all of a sudden like 15 cop cars come rolling up to the house, and SWAT team starts blowing in through the windows, and the caption was like, "What Christmas is going to be like if in New York." It's like cops can be rolling anywhere, but it's the same thing. Like my cousin in California, he was saying, he's like, I'm not looking forward to the calls because like our deputies, like our sheriff's department, our dispatchers, they are pretty good at screening that stuff out to where they don't respond to things like that.
Oh,
he's
sure.
like, but the amount of calls that we still get of like my neighbor next door is having a party over there and they got way more of the people. There's no social distancing, no mask, and just people just snitching on their own neighbors. It's like.
Just put a sign on your yard if you're gonna do this in New York and say that you're having a peaceful protest about Black Lives Matter or something like that.
Any other hot topics that are in the news
and you'll probably
today.
get more neighbors coming over at that point. But so here are my thoughts with all this, and I wanted to get your opinion on this. What are the implications of the sheriffs and people of power coming out against these orders? So. As I'm reading this, as I'm reading all these articles and I'm looking at everything that's happening, it's extremely politicized, right? So you have Cuomo coming out or Newsom coming out saying, hey, this is an executive order and all this. The sheriffs are not going to enforce it. The police is not going to enforce it. There's people with, some common sense. They're not going to be going around. And I mean, not common sense so much about the virus, but like... I'm sure you should have much better things to do than driving around trying to count how many people are at each property. Like that to me, if that's all you're doing, my God, we have no crime in the country then. Like we have a peaceful ass country. So that's one thing. But then my thing is like, why come out and say it publicly? You can go ahead and do it, but coming out, and I'm not saying I'm against it or anything, but I'm just, trying to look at both sides. Like if you're coming out saying, as the sheriff, somebody of authority in those counties and those cities, coming out and saying, we are not going to enforce this, you are further feeding to the divide and the hysteria and the insecurity and the fear of the people by, defying the leader of that.
Well, I think
state.
it's a lot of it is it's like it's the politics of it because you're talking rural county sheriffs, smaller towns that are coming against this. But we know like New York, California, Illinois, like they're run by Chicago, New York, L.A., San Francisco, San Diego, like the big cities. And so they have big ties to those people. So they think very differently. You can just look at the results from the election of which states and counties went which direction to where you have it very fed up to where I think what it's going to come to is like when the elections come back around. And people are going to remember these things. They're just like, you know what? Screw this stuff. It's like the way you treated this, the way you handled this, the way you went about governing. We don't think you're fit for office, and they're going to vote. They're going to do it via votes. To where I think that's where it is. Like to where you have it's so politicized still. To where the rural counties where people enjoy their freedom, they don't want to be told what the government or being told by their government what they should and shouldn't be doing. They're the ones that are revolting, and you have those sheriffs in those counties that are just like, you know what? Screw this. If you want to dictate all of New York the way you want to do New York City, knock yourself out, but I'm not going to enforce your rules, and there's really not a whole lot you can do about it because we're talking 75% of the state.
No, and I understand that, and I understand. What I'm saying is what I keep seeing from the people, from the public, from, is all this divisiveness that there is, the left versus the right?
Yeah.
The masks versus no masks. It's so much of the versus. And now you're having it. That's why, like I said, the common thread throughout this whole episode is going to be the lack of confidence, trust, and the defiance against the government. You understand? And even from the same people within the government, where it's like you're having Biden campaign, they're going to probably come out with some strict stuff for COVID once he goes into office and everything. They're probably going to come out with some strict stuff, federal face masks
and stuff,
and all this other stuff. But then you're going to have people like Abbott, like the guy from Florida, North Dakota, saying what? No, F you, we're not going to do it. So now you're having even more divisiveness. Now you're having even more issue. Like, that's what I'm seeing is that as far as, like, we've talked about civil unrest before, like, the country keeps getting, and we're seeing it again at the political level, just keeps getting more divisive, more separated, more conflicts coming about. You're having the sheriffs, you're having the mayors, you're having everybody arguing with each other, disagreeing. If one comes out with one thing, the other one will go against it just because they can. You understand? Like we see that here all the time between Abbott and
Wolf and Nuremberg.
Nuremberg.
Yeah.
Nuremberg. Anything Abbott says,
No,
Nuremberg wants to do
well,
the opposite.
they tried to shut the city down multiple times when this all started, but Abbott came out and said you can't, like, governor federally rules. It's nothing that the states can overstep the governor of the state. So he kept things open for quite some time with the no mask mandates and stuff like that. And I think he he knew the right thing to do was or knew what he wanted to do was like doing the mask mandate for people in like big cities, but he didn't want to reverse his course. So that's why I think he let Wolf and these other major judges come out and require the businesses to do it and didn't overstep and say, hey, you're trying to circumvent my law. No, I think he went ahead and let that happen. But it'll be interesting to see what happens, because that's one thing that Biden has come out to say, that is like, I'm not going to shut any things down, or like if I need to shut things down and I can't, I'm going to go to every single governor, every single mayor, and like try to fight those.
He's going to meet with.
Yeah, it's like that's going to be your number
them.
one priority as president. You're going to meet with every single mayor of every single city and ask them to plead with them to create this.
Well,
but,
I mean you got to look at it, it's politics, right? He said whatever he needed to say to get elected. But you got to look at their actions. So you look at who's forming the cabinet and his advisors and everything.
Yeah.
And everybody in the cabinet, all part of his advisors, they're all people that are for shutdowns.
Well, the crazy thing is, like, the CDC, the WHO have all come out and said shutdowns do not work. And they are
flip-flop on it.
Well, their last statement, they came out and said that should be a measure of absolute last resort, because of the things that we've all stated from the very beginning, that by shutting down, you're creating so many more social problems that impact health, which is what the WHO and the CDC care about, supposedly. So those things, they're saying, like, don't shut down because you create such massive poverty, you create domestic violence, you create alcohol, drug abuse, suicide rates start dramatically increasing, and it's a direct cause and effect that when, like, they shut down, those things spiked up. So it is something that
well, it's funny because we have Lauren says, wait, the election is over? Look, Time magazine came out with the cover of saying Biden is the 46th president. I think on the left, and the majority of the media is the left, right? It's controlled by the left and everything, is already, they need to solidify Biden's win, because if for whatever reason there's actual fraud found, right? Like substantial. Because I don't, like we said before, the question isn't whether there was or wasn't fraud, was there substantial fraud to overturn the votes for Biden, and where Trump gets them and now he wins. They're trying to solidify it, because if that happens, I think what they're counting on is the mayhem that is going to come out of it. That even if they find it, it's going to get to a point where they're probably going to look at each other and say, do we really want to bring this evidence out and completely just take
just
America
discredit
into
all
a
the election,
nosedive?
to where it is something to where if they can prove all that stuff, it is like you're going to absolutely destroy the public's faith in the election system and the political system.
And you're going to make one side of the aisle flip the hell out, right? They're already on edge.
Yeah.
So you're going to make them flip the hell out, and you're going to make the other side defend their point. So now you're creating even more anger, right? I think, honestly, whether you like Biden or not, I think the best choice is to just kind of let this election go, because at that point, if they were to reverse it and give it to Trump, Trump is going to be the president of a burning country, damn near. You understand? Like,
well, I mean, it's gonna be 50% versus the 50%.
I don't know. Regardless, but it's still gonna be a chaotic country.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And my thing is, like, I don't think Trump is the person to pull us out of it, because he is not a person that can unite. And and I think anybody can agree on that. He's not a person that unites. He's a person that stirs shit up and brings a lot of crap to light, and he's done what he's done.
I mean, he's tough. He's very tough on a lot of things. He doesn't care about your feelings.
Yeah.
So that is something that, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with it. Well, and we'll find out soon enough in the next coming months. One of the things
I don't know if you were going to move on, but
no.
Before you move on, like, one of the things that I found very interesting is ammos. right? So I feel like a lot of people have been voting with gun and ammo, pretty much, because it's like gun sales have gone through the roof this past year, and even more after the election.
What was it? I saw something that like there's a year backlog on ammunition, or like $1 billion backlog on ammunition.
So you have ammunition that in most places now you can't even find ammunition. Last time I was looking for ammo, we were looking at, they were selling them for like a box of 50, just full metal jacket, 9mm, selling it for $60 at these gun and ammo places. $60 when they were originally, what, 15? 13?
Yeah.
Insane, right?
6 months ago. Or not 6 months ago now, but a year ago.
So you have all this. So I was listening to an interview where somebody said, like, are Americans that bad a shot that they need so much ammo? That shit was just
Well, it's also one of the things like, in case I need to get on the run. You can't run with 800 pounds of ammunition strapped to your back. Like, you got 10,000 rounds. Okay. Like, you really not, I mean, you fortress inside your house. You can just like sit inside your closet, but it's kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. But one of the things I heard this and I wanted to check it about New York, which was just like the hypocrisy of it, is the New York Post comes out and says Governor Cuomo to give himself a $25,000 a year raise this year during all of this stuff when he's facing a $63 billion budget deficit. To where it's just like, if I was in New York, I would be so livid. Well, I'm like, wait, so we're all suffering, getting shut down, and now you're paying yourself more with our tax dollars, which we aren't making anymore, and you're giving yourself a $25,000 a year raise. Like, oh my God. So I think a lot of this is going to come around with these elections.
My brother lives in New York, and, I've told you how he is with his constitutional rights and everything.
Yeah.
He likes them. And he's been him and his wife have been very vocal about Cuomo. And it's just like, I look at them and I'm like, what are you guys waiting for? I mean, people are fleeing New York by the hundreds of thousands. I think they were talking about like over 300,000 or 400,000 people.
New York
already
City.
Just,
That was just New York City.
New York City.
Yeah, like 300,000 people live in New York City already.
Where the worst is, right? But it's like, it's insane. It's really just nuts how much they're just inching little by little and taking, in a sense, they are taking a lot of your civil rights, your constitutional rights, your right to decide what you want to do with your life.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're saying, well, it's for the good of the many. And it's like, well, in your opinion, it's for the good of the many. You understand? So now they're taking all this away. People are getting pissed. They keep getting pissed. And, I don't know. You're going to keep seeing that flee.
Tommy, I see some of your comments here. Is like, and I know the answer to this already, but man, did you come from a military background with the descriptions you're given with the to suppress the bad guy, to maneuver, to pinpoint, point, pop, then precision fire, post maneuver? It's like, yep. And that just
it's called suppressive fire.
Yeah, it's like, it's not about being a bad shot. It's just a pump enough lead in the air, but everyone go, I'm gonna stay down. I don't know where those bullets are going.
Well, I mean, we've done it. We talked about it before. My wife got her a gun, took it to the range. She understands how to use it. We're actually going to be taking a class shortly on like how to use it for defense purposes.
Yeah.
Because it's not that's another thing that's scary. Like, it's not just go and get a gun because you can get a gun. Like, get educated about owning a gun.
Yeah, you need to know
owning
what you're doing with it.
Is
you're just
serious. Like, if you have to use it, you got to understand that you're using it because you're going to take somebody's life. You cannot take that lightly. You understand? That's not a joke. Like, you got to take owning a gun very serious. How you store the gun. How do you carry the gun if you have the license to carry? Like, you got to understand, and you got to look at the laws. You got to look at the rules. You got to practice. You got to understand how guns work. Yeah. Every time I hear somebody that they're like, oh, I don't like guns, I don't believe in guns, it's just because of ignorance, right? You don't understand and you're afraid of them, which is perfectly understandable. But how you overcome that is by getting educated, by understanding how to do it. And I strongly recommend, if you're going to get a gun, get educated. Please, just having a gun isn't enough. You need to understand that it's a real power. Like, you can kill somebody. It's a real weapon. You understand? Like, learn how to use it.
Well, I mean, to go a little bit out of order, let's finish these two political ones, and we'll jump back to the economy stuff. To where like
There's more political?
yeah, and I'd like to get off politics, but there's 2 more articles. One of them, and this is something that I disagree with, that I want to hear your thoughts on this, is that the title was Californians Prepared to Descend on Georgia to Fight for Democrats in Senate Race. And so I won't read the whole thing, but a host of California residents and California-based politicians' organizations are prepared to descend on Georgia to campaign for the 2 Democratic U.S. Senator candidates whose victory would have profound implications for the direction of the country. Because if they win these 2 Senate races in January, and the reason they're doing those is because in Georgia... Oh, I was like, in Georgia, you have to win a majority. Mm-hmm. And the 2 Senate third-party candidate coming in, or one of them had a lot more. So now they're going to runoffs. But if the Democrats do win those 2 seats, now it's a 50 senators are Republican, 50 senators Democrats. So you have a tie. But then the breaks the tie is the Vice President, Kamala Harris. So that would have profound implications on the directions of the country is heading. And that's what I don't agree with, is that you have people from California now saying, in other states saying, we're moving to Georgia for a few months so they can vote and then move back out of the state. Andrew Yang said him and his family are moving from California, I think is where they live, to Georgia to take up residency, to become a resident so they can vote in January. And so they're a Georgia citizen, so they can vote. But it's like, that's where I don't disagree. It's like other states where have all this money and all this power go and influence elections of those people from that state, saying, we're going to send money there. We're going to send people there to take up residency to influence that election of that state, when they have no care of what Georgia does. Yeah. It's I'm going to influence it my way for 6 months, and then I'm going to go back to where I came from, and now so we can control the entire nation. That's what I don't disagree with, when you have so much money flowing out of these other states, influencing elections in the local markets or in local states.
To that point, I mean, I think that you should have limits as far as, if you want to vote in a state, right, that it's not your presidential no, even then, if you want to vote, you got to have at least had residence in that state for at least a year or something, right? Like, have some limit of time of being in that state, paying taxes, contributing to that state, before you even have the right to dictate which way that state goes. Yeah. You can't just simply get there and already start enforcing your beliefs,
and that was the end of the article. The last paragraph was, the vast number of people who say they are willing to move to Georgia just so they can vote in the runoff election has prompted the state officials to push back on the idea. So and that makes sense. It's like, whoa, you guys can't come here to do this because of your political agenda. If you're going to do it, you can be here you have to live here for 6 months, or you had to vote in the primary to vote in this runoff election. It's like, you can't just come here, take up residency so you can vote in 6 months and then leave again. Like, that doesn't make sense. That gets very frustrating to me, where it's just like, okay, come on, that's BS that you're allowed to do that.
After this live, I'm actually going to look for this clip that I'm going to talk about, and I'll post it in the show notes, so make sure to check back. Patrick Bet-David, I was listening to his podcast, and he talked about many, many years ago about how to earn your vote, right? Because that is one thing that, as an immigrant, as somebody that I've had to work to become a citizen of this country, right? I've earned, I believe, my right to vote for this country because I've chosen to be here, and I've busted my ass to stay, right? So Americans having that, what do they call that? That entitlement of being able to vote just because you were born here. I think we need to move that, where he was saying, no, you still need to earn your right to vote, right? Because if you don't have skin in the game, you should not be allowed to vote. Because then what are you voting on? You don't understand anything. You haven't contributed. So he talks about like how you earn votes. It's like, if you pay X amount in taxes, you're contributing, right? So you should earn your right to vote. If you have certain degrees from colleges and stuff like that, if you serve in the military,
there's an electoral system, not electoral, but yeah, there's a bar system that allows you to get in.
That a person can get up to 100 votes, a person, based on all these qualifications, and it's a very,
It's an interesting
very,
concept.
very interesting. Like I'm gonna.
So the harder you work, it's like, oh, you work hard, you get rewarded.
Yeah.
You don't get them for free.
And there's no age
but-
limit. There's no like. So he's like, if you're 16 and you've paid $1,000, because his minimum was you have to pay a minimum of $1,000 into taxes for you to have one vote.
Which isn't much. Like you make like 10 grand in a year and you're paying that.
I mean, yeah, I guess it depends like what tax bracket you're in, because I've anybody
Well, yeah,
that,
but I think
you
most-
know,
I think
most
most-
people don't even pay taxes at certain tax brackets. But anyway, regardless, if you made enough money that you've paid $1,000 into taxes, you get one vote. He's like, you know, and they were making the point, but what if you're, 16 years old? If you're 16 years old and you've had to pay $1,000 in taxes, you probably know more than somebody that's 30 that hasn't paid any taxes yet because they still live with their mom.
Yeah.
Right? You actually have been out working, contributing, and you're paying your taxes. Like,
Yeah.
you should have a right
You
to
know what
vote.
that feeling is. Like you realize like, man, I'm going to start paying attention to where this money goes when I have to pay this in. Because that's
Because-
one thing, like, I don't like paying taxes because I see where my tax dollars go and what they get used for and how they get wasted. That's where it's like, I don't like the way you do that. So that's why we try to minimize our taxes as much as possible, legally, obviously. But the tax code does allow for that kind of stuff because they want you to produce. They want you to invest. The reason we get a write-off buying all this equipment for this podcast is because we're using it for our business to grow. So we get to write those things off because now it's an investment.
Don't
in the
say those things too loud. Come on, man. we pay our taxes. We don't get write-offs.
Yeah.
We like
Yeah.
overpaying.
But anyways, I think we can get into some economic news now and kind of get away from politics and COVID. That was our 45-minute stint on
Well,
that.
for everybody, before we move over, for everybody watching and listening, please put in the comments. Let me know. Put a thumbs up if you guys want us to do this coming Friday after Thanksgiving, because we're not sure whether or not we should do it. Just because Thursday's Thanksgiving, I hear that people for whatever reason get wasted on Thanksgiving. They didn't know that was a thing. I understand being full of
If you
food,
got to
but-
hang around with a bunch of family, well, you're not supposed to, I guess, but hang around with a ton
In
of your
Texas,
family
you
that
can.
you never see, and I was like, I got to hang out with Uncle Jerry. The only way I could do that was with a bottle of wine. That's how most people,
Well,
some of their extended family, are like, I'm really not too fond of him.
Man, you're very bougie, huh? Bottle of wine, not
Well,
bottle
it's
of
an
Jack
all-day
or something.
thing, yeah.
But anyway, like, if you guys want us to do it, if you guys feel that, yes, I'm gonna join live. I'm gonna be there watching Coffee with the Johns. Put it in the chat. Let me know, and then we'll do it. But if we don't get enough people saying that yes, they want to hear it, they want to listen to it, then we are not gonna do it. Because I mean,
We'll just
know.
take a week off.
yeah, we'll take that week off.
Well, we also kicked around the idea of just doing a little bit of a later start for people not having to get up as early.
Right, and then if you say, well, maybe not 8 a.m., well, let's do it 9 a.m. All right, don't push it too much because I actually do get up early, so I'm not trying to do this, kill most of my morning. But, if you guys prefer instead of 8, 9 a.m. and you're going to join and we get, I don't know, if I get like 15 of you guys to say yes, then we'll do it. But if we get 14, we will not do it. So,
We get
but being
14.
that our thought is that, nobody's going to be going out Black Friday shopping because everything's going to be online, right?
Yeah.
Well, nobody's going to be doing it. So if you're home Friday morning and you want to catch up on the news, have a good laugh, and hang out with some cool guys and watch us, no, we are the cool guys.
Hang out with the hairless wonder.
The hairless wonder, all aerodynamic over here. Put it in the chat. Let me know, and that way we just go ahead and schedule that in.
LJ, I'm not doing 6 a.m. because I know you don't even get up at 6 a.m. ever.
Yeah, this guy only to pee. He gets up at 6 a.m.
No, get up to me.
Go ahead, man.
Okay, so the next topic, let's move on to a little bit of economic news that I think is very interesting. So one of the Atlanta Federal Reserve President Raphael Bostic said the central bank is prepared to step in with more money policy to help if needed to help businesses and people get through what could be some tough months ahead. He says, and that's one thing we didn't mention is like now we have 2 vaccines out that are both shown to be 94, 95% efficient. And one of them I think is submitting for emergency approval today. And that could be within a month. They're saying they could be getting vaccines out to first responders and stuff. So that's good news at the end of all this, that there is vaccines coming out that as long as they get approved for emergency approval, they will start being distributed. How long that takes, who knows?
Pfizer's effective rate went up.
Yeah, it went up to like 94, 95, and then Moderna came out and said theirs was 95%. But that's good. But in this article, he says the vaccine is definitely positive news and will definitely lead to I think, a pretty robust recovery once it gets into the population deep enough. But we really have short-term and intermediate-term concerns with the spike in the virus and what that's going to do for businesses in terms of the things that we're able to produce, in terms of consumers and their willingness to go out and buy things. One of the chief concerns is over the potential for an uneven recovery and complacency that could occur if some businesses recover and others don't. That's where he thinks the Fed should be more aggressive. He ends with a quote that says, I think the economy is fine, but I do believe the recovery could be more robust than it is currently playing out to be. He said, we know there are communities that are hurting. The virus has hit them extremely hard. We know small businesses have been on the edge for quite some time. We need to be thinking that what ways that we can act to help them get through this minimum damage. So it's interesting to say that they think they still have juice. The title of it was Bostic says Fed tools still have juice and will be used if the economy slows. And leading into the other topics, like what are more topics? The interest rates are zero. The only thing they have is more quantitative easing, pumping more money into the economy, inflating asset prices. And what happens with
they're already investing in the stock market.
Yeah, they're buying off like all this debt from people, putting more cash into the economy, pushing more and more out further on the risk spectrum, searching for yield, for returns, for growth. But then it's also where they say this kind of whole K-shaped recovery. It's like, who gets that money? People that are holding these assets. Who holds assets? Usually not people that hold 30, 40 or make 30, 40, 50 grand a year, because their assets are in their 401ks where, yeah, their 401k goes up, but they can't touch those for 30, 40 years or whatever it may be till their retirement. To where I think this leads perfectly into your next topic that you wanted to cover is when they pump all this money into the economy, where does it all go? And how do you have a robust economy and help these small businesses like he talks about in this article? So take it away with your next topic,
Which is?
the Tesla and the Bitcoin.
Good. No, you're saying small businesses. I'm like, I don't have anything about a small
No,
business.
but that's just more of the question. Where does the money go when they keep pumping more money into this economy, and like how does it quote unquote trickle down to the small businesses?
Well, that's the problem, right? It's not trickling down because they're not pumping it in the right areas the right way. But let's talk about Tesla. Tesla just is about to join the S&P 500. So this is going to be happening Monday, December 21st. And Tesla will be one of the 10 most valuable companies in the index. So to be included in the S&P 500, you have to have a market cap minimum of $8.2 billion. And the company must report 4 straight quarters of profit as determined by the U.S. General Acceptance Accountability Principles. Wow, mouthful. So you got to have 8.2 billion of market cap, all right, and 4 quarters of profit. Tesla's market cap. Let's kind of look into the numbers. So Tesla has had the 5th consecutive quarter of profits, and the third quarter was 8.7 billion. The third quarter was 8.7 billion. The S&P wants you to have a market cap of 8.2 billion. So keep those numbers in mind. The company also reported that it delivered 139,000 vehicles during the third quarter. 139,000 Teslas. Holy crap.
I mean,
they're not cheap cars either.
No, they haven't come out with their. I don't think they've come out with their entry level 40,000. They said they are.
They've been. Well, Musk has been talking about. He's been targeting a $35,000 price point for years now. that he wants to come out with a Tesla that's, around the under 40 grand to compete pretty much with Ford and everybody else. But they're struggling to get the quality at that price. You got to really mass produce a lot more Teslas. I mean, it's
also the charging stations too that you got to have a place to go. It's like you got to retrofit your house to charge your car. You got to do all these things to where you drive it to work. You have to have enough stations to where you look out in a parking lot here in Texas. Like I see charging stations, but 10 for an entire parking lot of cars. You would have to have massive investment to make that even possible.
So I don't own a Tesla. And I don't think I will for quite some time. To me, that's a luxury, not a necessity. But for anybody that owns a Tesla, I'd be curious for you to put it in the chat and let me know, like, what is the process of outfitting your property so you can have the charging ports? And then, like, what's the durability, right? So you're saying, charging ports at stores and stuff like that. Do you really need them? Or it's like, well, as long as you charge it last night and you're not traveling cross country, you could have that charge is going to last you.
So you're saying you could charge it at night,
days.
Drive it to work, let it sit in the parking lot all day, drive it 15 miles home, and still have a charge.
Go grocery shopping, go to the mall, and still come back and still be good to put it back to charge and charge it again. Like I would like to know what that process is. So if anybody on here owns a Tesla, I would love to hear your feedback on that and how that process works. So that is what happened, right? But what is Tesla's market cap? $380 billion. $380 billion. So it was like, why the hell was it not inducted into the S&P? Well, because they need to have 4 straight quarters of profit. And then they have other little things that they want to gauge on.
Their stock price, I was just looking at it yesterday, it's gone up 500% just this year alone. You look over the 1 year ago, and it's a 500% return from this time last year.
Well, speaking of that, Tesla went public IPO in June 29, 2010, right? Literally 10 years ago, they went IPO. The share was priced at $17. So far, it has reached nearly $1,700. Then they did the 5-to-1 split and all of that. But for anybody that bought in, those early adopters, they've had a 10,000% increase on the price of Tesla. So because I was really like digging into it. I was like, when I saw this, I was like, okay, hold on. Why is Tesla worth so damn much?
Yeah.
Right? What is it about Tesla that is making it worth so damn much? And it's pretty much the biggest thing with Tesla is you have 2 big factors. One, they're not a car manufacturer, right? They are Tesla. They do everything. So they're doing, you have your obviously they're doing the cars, they're doing the supercharged refueling stations, they're doing the Powerwall home chargers, they're doing solar roofs. I mean, this guy,
his flamethrowers that he made.
Yeah, the flamethrowers that were kept selling.
And he had his own tequila too. As a joke, he made it sold out in a day.
Well, I don't know if that was part of the Tesla brand.
It literally said Tesla on the thing. Whatever.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, as part of the company, it's very versatile. Like it has a lot of areas. It's not just selling cars. It's doing a lot in the energy sector. And then let's not talk about even the underground loop that he's building from LA to Vegas.
The Boring Company.
The what?
The Boring Company.
Oh. So he has that. I mean, one of the things that I find amazing, and this is going to lead to the next topic, but one of the things I find amazing about it is that everybody has been doubting Elon Musk since the inception. This guy is a dreamer. He can't do this. He's out of his mind. All this. And it's like he's been proven everybody wrong.
Yeah. Well, that's what I look at. Like, if early adopter, like you weren't looking at it from traditional financial standpoint because the financials have not made sense and they still don't make sense compared to traditional standards. Where I look at the PE ratio and it's
They're starting to
850 to 1 when your normal PE ratio is like 15. So
I think even that though, break down in PE ratios for people that don't understand. But I think PE ratios, what used to be looked at I think that formula is probably changing now.
Well, yeah, and I think going back to like everyone says, oh, the 15s. Where I read a book by what is it, The Intelligent Investor about Warren Buffett and stuff like that, and they talk like 15 was the norm. Also, this was written back from like the look at Buffett in his heyday was like the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, but now they've pumped so much more money into the market, and who gets that money? It's the people with assets that hold these things. That's my point, where they're forcing the money further out on the risk spectrum to get returned, where it's taking companies like this and all these tech companies and shooting them through the roof, because you have these chances that can come about. And it's one of those that it keeps going higher and higher and higher and higher, and then you kind of get that effect when you see these numbers like, well, that FOMO thing, the fear of missing out, like, well, I don't want to miss out, so I'm going to jump in. And you have a lot of young kids taking their stimulus checks and dumping it into single stocks to get these returns. And then when they think, oh, 5-to-1 stock split, that means my stock's gonna jump. It's like, well, no, you just get 5 stocks for your 1 stock. But people think, well, it's a 5-to-1 they're thinking getting 5 for the price of 1, so they jump in and it pushes it even higher. So
it's a good marketing strategy to do it.
It is.
I mean, think about it. When a stock selling at 1,700 sounds so much more expensive than a stock selling at 250.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, well, you're still getting the same thing, but it sounds better.
Yeah.
So it's like, I can afford 250. It's like, you're not getting it cheaper. You're just getting a fraction of the stock that was once worth $1,700.
And that's where, to my point, though, it's like you can't go off traditional financials of just looking at, like, if you just looked at the straight balance sheet, you really need to understand exponential technologies of what the impact could be if they are successful, and put a bet on that, and understand social capabilities of what people feel. As like most people don't understand these financials, and they're betting with their emotions, not based on the financial. There's like, I just like the company. He's created a brand that's hot, it's sexy, it's cool, and he's in the news. He's a quirky guy. He makes little jokes, and they're betting on
he smokes weed.
Yeah. They're betting on him and his abilities, not necessarily the financials of the company. And then it is one of the things that you take a guy like that and you pressure him and you try to sell short so much, and like you fuel somebody like that and doubting them, and he just works constantly, nonstop. I mean, Jobs was another guy like him that's creating revolutionary technologies.
Well,
and
it's kind of like you see, and I know some people are not going to like the comparison, but I mean, love him or hate him, it's kind of like Trump, where he doesn't care what your opinion is. He's going to do whatever the hell he wants to do, regardless of what you think about him.
Yeah.
Regardless if you think he's stupid or it doesn't make sense, he doesn't care. He's not moved by public opinion.
Yeah.
He's moved by, he has his mission, he has his purpose, and that is what he's going after. Where I look at all this is that I look at it as the public is speaking, right? And as investors, we need to start thinking about going green. What does that look like as we get into building more homes and stuff like that? It's thinking about going green, because that is what people are essentially investing in. That is what Musk represents. You know, it's the whole going green, energy efficient, you know, away from oil, away from coal, away from all that. Let's do solar energy. Let's do all this. So it's trying to think more as an investor. It's like, all right, look, this company did not get this big, you know, by sheer just inflation. Like, people are buying the stock. People are investing in the company. So it's like, people believe in going green. I think this is a good projector and understanding of where the population is going.
Yeah, and Tommy puts a good point here, though. Is like, keep in mind he represents a single point of failure, to where it is all about Musk. Well, my question would be to that is, who is the number 2? Because everyone thought Apple was all about Steve Jobs, and it was, and it failed once he left originally. But when he came back and he passed away in 2010, 11, 12, he had built his company back up, and Tim Cook stepped in, and now you can't disregard Apple has been quite successful without running with Steve Jobs with Tim Cook at the helm. So who was the number? Has Jobs done, or Musk done a good job of creating and cultivating a number 2 that if something were to happen to him, that could step in and help run this company? The other thing is, though, Apple was a much more stable company when Jobs passed away than if something were to happen to Musk today. So it'd be something that does he have a number 2? Who is it, and what are their capabilities of
Well,
running that company.
Usually stuff like that with the number two, and you're not going to hear about it until the guy dies. Like, nobody's going to hear about somebody's number two while they're alive because it's them. Elon Musk is him. And I'm sure he has people that are shadowing him, that are learning everything about him, everything that he's doing, in case some shit happens. But it's him, you know. And Tesla, if anything was to happen anytime soon to Musk, Tesla would take a nosedive. You know, until that, because it's like right now it's all on him, right? That's the people are investing on Elon, not in Tesla, right? So if he was to die, somebody like what happened with Steve Jobs, you know, Cook had to come in and prove his worth. He wasn't. I don't think he's as innovative as Jobs was, but he knows how to run the business. You understand? He's proved that he knows how to run and grow Apple. He's made it extremely successful. But just a little fun fact of all this is that Bezos is now 49 years old, worth $120 billion.
Wait, he said Bezos. You mean Musk?
That's what I said.
Yeah.
In my head, but I said Bezos out loud. Okay, so Musk is now worth $120 billion at 49 years old. He is, just in 2020, his net worth has increased by $82.2 billion just this year alone. I mean, it's just nuts. And he's $8 billion away from Bill Gates, but you know, a few $63 billion away from Bezos, as Bezos is the far richest guy in the world by quite a margin. So, I mean, my goodness, that is just so much money when you start thinking about, you know, like, when you start kind of complaining about how the way you look at things, and then you think of somebody that's worth $120 billion, it's like, holy crap.
Well, you just I don't
Obviously,
have I don't have
based on the
something
stock
I don't
price.
have something to set up to be like, what would that be like if he bought something for like $10,000, like what would that be in a contribution when you bring it down to like your average person? It's like going and buying a small 5-cent piece of candy for them spending like $10,000. Like to go out and spend 10 grand, it's like us going and buying a 5-cent piece of candy. Yep. Just because it's like 10 grand, done. It's just a drop in a bucket that's so large that they don't even care. To where like it's just a different lifestyle. To where like moving about in normal society anymore, just like. You just out of touch with everything. Like you just don't like. Yeah, I go to the store. I just pay whatever. I buy whatever. It's just like money doesn't become anything anymore. It's just what's that? Wolf of Wall Street. Look, it's fun coupons.
Fun coupons, yeah. But Tommy Ray, he says, true, but number two has to be put out, seen as number two. Who was number two after Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, and that handoff was seamless? Correct. But you got to think about that, like you said, right? The handoff was seamless because they planned the handoff. What happened with Jobs is that he died.
Well, but they kind of knew it was coming down.
It was coming, but you know, it was still, I think, rather quick. Well, he was fighting with cancer and all this for quite some time, but I think it happens. It's a little harder when it happens that quick. To do a seamless handoff. But yeah, I agree. I mean, you do have to prepare the market if you don't want your stock to tank. But I don't think Musk really cares about, you know, I don't know. Maybe he does care about his legacy and what's going to happen after he's gone. Maybe he's not even thinking about it. But moving on, kind of what this whole thing goes where 2020, right, Tesla has been blowing up. And now we've also seen a huge surge in Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is up 15%. And it's blowing people's minds. So I want to actually read this. It's from Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio is the owner, founder, CEO. CEO is this
CIO, I think now. Co-chief investment officer, I think is what he is.
Bridgewater's. It's a huge hedge.
The world's largest private hedge fund in the world.
So he's doing his thing, and he puts this out. Because he's always been against Bitcoin from the start. He says, I might be missing something, but about Bitcoin, so I'd love to be corrected. My problems with Bitcoin are being an effective currency are the following. One, Bitcoin is not very good as a medium of exchange because you can't buy much with it. I presume that's because it's too volatile for most merchants to use, but correct me if I'm wrong. Number 2, it's not very good as a storehold of wealth because its volatility. His volatility is great and has little correlation with the price of what I need to buy. So owning it didn't protect my buying power. And number 3, if it becomes successful enough to compete and be threatening enough to currencies, the governments will outlaw it and make it too dangerous to use. Also, unlike gold, which is the third highest reserve asset that central banks own, I can't imagine central banks, big institutional investors, businesses, or multinational companies using it. If I'm wrong about these things, I would love to be corrected. Thank you. So for that, you can go on Twitter and correct them if you feel you can correct them. But his point is, it's not really used as currency. It's not a store of wealth. But what we've seen is during this whole, going back to the theme of the podcast, right? This whole year, that's been like the faith in the government, the faith in the system has been deteriorating so rapidly that gold and Bitcoin both have been rising, right? And Bitcoin from day one has kind of come out, not that it's come out that way, but it's kind of been invested as a way to not depend on government fiat currency, right? It's a form of currency controlled by the people and not dictated by any government. So it's very interesting to see that now it's what is it? It's like near 15,000 again.
Yeah, I think 17,000.
Yeah, where it had tanked all the way down to 3, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, Bitcoin is a fad, is going away," and now during this crisis, it's blown up again, and people are saying that it has a lot more room to go. So we have another CEO of a $12 billion wealth advisory, the Veer Group, and he agreed in the note on Wednesday, saying inflation fears spurred by massive government spending during the pandemic have investors piling into safe haven assets, in particular those not tied to any specific country, such as Bitcoin and gold, as a shield against the turbulence. And then he said on Wednesday that 73% of the more than 700 of its millionaire clients who responded to a firm's annual cryptocurrency survey say that they already invested in crypto. 73% of 700 millionaires have already invested in crypto or plan to by 2023. That's a huge percentage, right? 73% of millionaires. That means by 2023. Like, what does that mean to me? Unless obviously it's a kind of pump and dump scheme, price is going to keep going up. Because if you have that amount of millionaires saying they're going to keep investing in Bitcoin and crypto until 2023, right? Prices are going to keep going up. So how do you see this?
Well, for every buyer of, it's Bitcoin is like a stock price. For every buyer, there's a seller. Yes, you get like about a 2% increase every year due to the fact of mining and stuff like that. But that's why the price is going up, is because more and more people are piling into it, driving the prices up. And just like gold, like it only limits so much more to the supply in a year, but you have more people trying to buy it. That's what drives the price up. To where I think with this, it's kind of like the Tesla stock. If you invested in an early adopter in 2010, you made the bet right, and up to this point, you've made a lot of money off of placing in that. But it's also one of the things that I'm sure somebody could go through and find a lot of companies that started around the same time as Tesla that didn't work out and they failed and went to zero. To where this, it's not like, to Ray Dalio's point, like it's not really a currency, because I don't go around. I know there's a few places you can go use Bitcoin, but it's usually you have to do something via online that takes Bitcoin. And it is extremely volatile, because I was looking at it the other day that it dropped, I think, all the way down to 3,000 in March, and I just looked at it now, it's up 18,000 right now. So you've had that huge swing
Yeah.
in just the short period of time, but you also had that huge swing back in 2018 when things were hot, and then it crashed all the way back down to 3,000. So there is a massive volatility to where it's something that if you're going to invest in it, I think that's where a lot of these wealthy people do it, is they put it's a chip on the table kind of thing. Just like starting with Tesla back in 2010, it's like, I get it, I believe the vision, I don't in you, but I don't quite see the applicability of it long term, but I'm going to put something on the table to see if it does perform over the long term.
I think it's more than a chip on the table, because I mean, for it to be rising this much, for this firm to have 700 millionaires saying that they're going to invest in crypto, like it's starting to get to a point where and you have, and I'm talking about common people, not even, let's not even talk about your wealthy investors, people that understand economics, markets, and everything. A lot of common people are investing in Bitcoin because they feel that it's protecting their wealth.
I think they're investing in it because I think it goes up in price. Just like 2018, it wasn't a
Of
protect
course.
in wealth. It's like, I'm going to get rich because it goes up. It's been going up. It's been from 3,000 to 18,000.
Speculative.
Yeah, I think a lot of that drive is still people saying like, oh, Bitcoin's backing up, going up. I missed the first jump. I'm going to get in now and buy it. So I think that's more your common people
Okay.
are riding it for that.
I agree. So you don't feel that it's the lack of faith in the government. You think it's more people jumping on the bandwagon of making a quick buck.
To a degree. So if you separated the economy out and you had your bottom 50 and I mean even less than that, let's say it's or higher than that, like your bottom 65, 70%, I think they're jumping in because it's speculative. Because you ask people like, what's Bitcoin? Oh, it's a digital currency. Yeah, but what is Bitcoin? It's not, what can you do with it? Like, it's really the underlying technology, the distributed ledger, and the stuff that really makes that technology work.
Right.
So most people don't understand or take the time to research Bitcoin. They just type in Bitcoin and see the price skyrocketing and they jump in.
Yeah.
I think there are people at the top that do see that, hey, if you get enough of the people investing with that mentality and create a large enough market cap that it starts being able to chip away at that kind of reserve currency and build faith long term over something to say like the dollar. So it isn't manipulated, but it's such a massive pool that you have, what does they say? Like the reason the dollars are reserve currency is because it has such a depth of debt market attached to it that you can't just wipe away that debt overnight and lose it. Well, the longer Bitcoin stays at such a high valuation, I think you will come out with vehicles, and you've seen some of it trying to create ETFs and stuff related to stock market that do create debt markets and debt pools behind a currency or a reserve like a Bitcoin. It needs to have some of the volatility go down to create a massive market, but the longer it stays higher and stays up that point, I think you'll create debt markets behind it that do make it something that is not a currency, but something like gold that is a store of wealth once enough debt and stability get attached to it.
So how do you feel that the government can actually stop this from happening? Because they talk about, they talk about that if it becomes powerful enough, the government's going to step in.
Yeah.
How? How can the government step in and manipulate and control Bitcoin?
Well, they can't control it, but they can make it to where like no U.S. merchant can accept it.
How? Like just
Literally like that.
You can't.
They're
telling you how to run your business. You can't
they just say like you can't accept or not saying that you can accept Bitcoin, but then they can tax the piss out of it and say if you do a currency this route, we're going to tax it. They make it just so hard to use. Like they can't. Then it becomes like a gold. Like you can get a gold coin now. You can buy one, but try going buying groceries with a gold coin. You got to have dollars. So when banks can't,
but you're going to essentially sell and accept Bitcoin, and then when you need it, you just convert it to dollars and go spend it.
Or unless you make it to where you can't do that, or they trace it in some way. Like I think the government could step in and make it not a currency. Not saying it couldn't be used as a store of wealth where you can convert it, but you still couldn't use the currency to where it's just like, yeah, good luck getting a loan on it with
I'd
dollars.
be curious to see how a government can actually come in and control Bitcoin. I'd be curious because even what you're saying, I'm still thinking. I'm like, I don't think they can stop you from collecting Bitcoin.
Well, gold, and they in 1930 they confiscated all the gold and said it's illegal for you to own gold, and if you could only own 10 gold coins.
But that was physical. Like they weren't stopping you. I don't know. I mean. I didn't look into it, but I don't think they were stopping you from like owning gold companies, or mining stocks and stuff like that. So you could probably own paper worth of gold, but you can't own the physical gold because they were trying to confiscate the gold. But with
They're trying
Bitcoin,
to devalue
it's
the dollar because it was pegged to the dollar back then.
electronic.
Well, it's electronic, but you don't think the government has in its infinite power of money that it couldn't create systems with people to somehow tap in to trace this stuff, to see where the underlying things come from? Because, I mean, it's the same thing. Somebody could very easily, like a grocery store, take dollars, convert to gold to store wealth, and then convert it back to dollars and then use it. And it could be the same thing with Bitcoin and stuff, but they just can't accept straight Bitcoin.
I like Tommy's point, and I think this is a very good point, where he says, have you not seen the power of the government or the media to misinform or destroy confidence?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I think that's an excellent way of looking at it, because it's like, how can you control it? Well, you control the narrative behind it.
Yeah.
If you can control the narrative, you can pretty much misinform and drown out, because that we have seen. Right, we have seen where you have, from social platforms to the media, controlling what you see and don't see. Right, where if it's something that is gonna trigger some people, they're gonna push it off and not let you post on social media. They're not gonna let you post your opinions.
I think they could make it very hard to convert.
Yeah,
because right now, like, once it gets like convertibility, and almost instantly, that's something that could. What I mean makes it worth more. I mean, I think by doing that, controlling the narrative, making it harder to transact with, it would make kind of a black market for it, to where it would make the value go extremely high, because now it's a rare asset and it's hard to get, but people now still want it. Right. Because it is free from the government, but the government makes it so damn hard to use that would it be hard to convert. Where like a chunk of gold, it's physical. I'm holding it in my hand. Yeah. I can do something with that. But if like you have it, it's digital. It's out in the computer space. It's on your phone. Now, how do you go transact that when more and more and more, like, they're listening to everything we're doing with these phones because they're sitting here and they have access to it? How would they not be able to see like what's on your phone? An app that's on your phone that controls those digital wallets that you're converting over into dollars. So I think there would be a way, if it became a huge threat, I think there would be a big battle with it. That
all right, let's stop talking about that, because then the computer's going to shut off and the feed's going to cut off like it has in the past. So let's not get too into that. But let's shift gears and talk about real estate, right? Our bread and butter, what we do, all these things affect real estate. So let's get into it. So this past month, after the election, mortgage demand from home buyers surges. So it's like everybody took a pause before the elections, because everybody's like, I don't know what the hell's gonna happen. Yeah. Election happened, and it's just gone way to hell up, right? It's gone up, like, I think I was seeing like 97% from the same week last year. I mean, it's insane. And usually, this is actually something that I had brought up to you previously, is because of COVID, are we going to see a winter like we typically see where real estate slows down? Because we're in November, and it seems like it just keeps picking up and getting hotter.
Well, I mean, months of inventory are rising. Like, it is slowing down from the summer months, but we were coming from such a high that...
Well, there wasn't much inventory being pumped out, where now we're starting to see more sellers
you're still
hit the
seeing,
market.
but now, like, I think I ran it the other day that... months of inventory did rise. So it showed that it was, quote unquote, cooling off, but it's also still lower than our 2019 summer lows. So we're still hotter in October, November than we were in June, July of last summer. So it's still extremely hot, but it's just not
last summer.
Oh, wow. So, but that's why I said we were coming off such a low of inventory in the summer months that, yes, it's slowing down, but
piling up this summer with, the winter now. So it's combining all of that inventory.
And I sat down with somebody on Wednesday. They were new, getting into real estate, and they asked me what I thought of the real estate market. And she said, well, the more people I talk to, other realtors and stuff, they're saying we're going to be dealing with a lot of foreclosures very soon. It's like,
yeah, realtors.
I was like,
yeah, they know what they're talking about.
I was like, possibly, but they also have, a lot of people have recency bias of what happened in 2008 when real estate was the absolute center of what the issue was in the economy. And it was a lending problem, what caused banks to lose money that needed to liquidate properties to get cash back into their coffers because it wasn't coming from the Federal Reserve like it is today. Right. To where I said I do see foreclosures starting to rise, but I also see that as long as you still have this, like especially here in Texas, we have this massive influx of people moving here. We have massive demand for housing to where it might normalize. You will see months of inventory, more listings and stuff come up. But as long as you have that constant buyer, people moving here, I think those houses are going to get gobbled up long before they get into foreclosure blocks. Because as long as you have somebody there to buy and you have the equity to sell, then I think those houses will sell. But somebody will buy them. The problem is going to be those people that bought in the last 3 years on, or maybe 2 years on an FHA loan, 3.5% down, and they don't have enough appreciation to sell the house with the fees that it costs for realtors. Like that's where I think you'll have a problem. You'll see those kind of foreclosures start to come about because it's also like even for sub twos, those really don't work because they have negative cash flow because their PITI is so high, their mortgage insurance is on top of that the rents don't make sense because values were so high, taxes were so high, and you're starting at such a high point. But I don't see real estate taking anywhere near as large a hit in Texas. It could be worse in other places, but I think there's such an influx of people.
Employment is a factor on all that because, in order for real estate to take that big a hit is because people don't have the jobs, right? They don't have the income. And then the other thing I was looking at is we're having record-breaking refis. So before where we were safe on the foreclosure side was everybody had a lot of equity. But more and more people keep pulling that equity out. Mm-hmm. You understand? So they're pulling all that equity out. So they're getting themselves a little tighter on their homes. You add that to if unemployment keeps going up and they do another long-term shutdown where people are not working.
Well, I'd like to see the stats on that. How many people are refining and how many people are doing cash out refinances? Because like my parents refinanced their home but didn't take any cash out. It was just to lower the interest rate.
Right.
So I wonder how many people actually took equity out of their home or just lowered their payment on the interest rate.
We are at the end of the month, so we're getting near the end of the month for the next market update. That'd be some probably good stats to try to figure out.
Yeah.
Because it's really that. Like with all the refinancing, I just can't I can't believe that people wouldn't be pulling out cash.
Yeah.
You understand? Because of all the fears of what's coming down the line and everything, if they have the option to pull out cash at like 2-3% interest, why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
right?
but then it's where do they spend that money? If people are coming in shutdowns, they
Maybe
get scared and cash holds in. So it's like they could withstand several months of payments.
But it's just seeing what it is that people start doing, right, with that money. Because it's easy to also spend it. Not everybody has a financial discipline with their expenses and everything to, they're like, oh, well, I have probably 20-30 grand sitting in my bank right now. Oh, this is only $100. Yeah, I can spend it. Oh, only 100. And we always talk about, it's that little 20, 50, 100, how it adds up at the end of every single month, right? So I'm just curious to see how all that's going to play out. As far as foreclosures go, we talked about it with the forbearances and everything.
Well, that's the next article
we can kind of see the next round possibly of people having trouble starting in March and April when the full 12 months of forbearance expires for those people.
Yeah, so it expires in March, but then you have to go through the foreclosure process. But that's if they don't extend it even further.
Right. And so there's a lot of ifs. So for people to say we're going to have foreclosures for sure, I don't see how they're saying that because I don't see what data they're looking at to show that with all of the government assistance, with all the things that are being put out there to make sure this doesn't happen to people, right? And then we got to allow foreclosures to come back and all this to happen again. So I don't know. I wouldn't be betting so much as an investor. I wouldn't be betting waiting for foreclosures or anything like that. I think you got to. And we're going to talk about marketing.
You got to understand the financial system too. You have to have an underlying understanding of how the economy and money moves and where it comes from tied to real estate. That's why I was telling these people that last recession, it was a lending crisis. So people couldn't get homes even if they wanted them. Like, I want to buy a house. I'm well qualified, but the money's not there. So that's what caused so many things to crash, and banks were losing so much money, and that's why they had to flood the market with properties just to get some money back. So that's why the people with cash, it did work.
And we have Tommy on here, how he talks about like he's going for a home equity cash, extract his money, and now he can pretty much do hard money loans to other investors and rehabbers. Mm-hmm. So but that is a very smart way of doing it, Tommy, because you're an investor. And actually, we're going to be starting back up our tips from the pros that we do live and back up in January. And I wanted to have you, Tommy, on here because you talk a lot about, that kind of renting out the rooms and doing all this creative stuff. And I would love to get your opinion and share that value for people. But it's going back to the topic, like saying, that's why when real estate agents are the ones, and you have some good real estate agents, the majority are not, but they kind of use that credibility because I'm an agent, I know what I'm talking about. And
Yeah.
it's like, man,
I'm a real estate professional. It's like,
no,
you're a real estate retail professional. That doesn't mean you're
well,
a
and you
real
just
estate
got your
investor
license, which
professional.
is not rocket science to do either. So it's it's not like you know a lot about economics, the real estate market. You don't spend your time. You just learn how to buy or sell a house for somebody. Like,
Yeah.
that's about it.
Well, and on the next topic here about like the forbearance and stuff, like if foreclosures are coming back. Well, the U.S. forbearance rate measuring the share of mortgages with suspended payments experienced a 20 basis point improvement last week after it fell to 5.47. So all mortgages that Fannie Mae, like the government, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac own, only 5.67 were in forbearance. And now that has dropped to 5.47. I was trying to find, I found a chart that showed how many people of loans overall versus Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were in the forbearance. Yeah. And it was actually quite a small percentage of homes that were in these forbearance programs that were falling behind on payments, to where I don't think you're going to have a lot of massive foreclosures like we did last time, like we just talked about. The U.S. forbearance rate has now fallen for 11 consecutive weeks, with an estimated 2.7 million homeowners still in mortgage forbearance plans, to where it's like, it's been falling for 11 weeks, and it's the thing that we keep talking about. Like, it depends on how long and how far they shut these things down.
Yeah.
So we have no idea what this is going to do, but it is 11 weeks that it has been falling, and it's down to less than 5.5% of loans are actually in these forbearances. And so the share of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac loans in forbearance fell. Also, that was all of loans that was at that. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac fell 13 basis points to 3.36, marking the 23rd week in a row that the GSE forbearance rate has dropped. So it's a very small subset of people that are actually in these forbearances when you look at the data. So people want to jump to see, oh, we're in a crisis. Last time all real estate prices fell.
Yes. All right. Are we back on? My goodness.
We were just talking about
Real
foreclosures
estate.
and real estate. I swear to God.
Apparently.
Somebody started listening to the beginning of it, and they're like, whoa, we got to shut it down. This might continue to go.
Yeah. It is not liking us. So, but yeah, so kind of picking up, just put in the comment if you guys see us again, if everything's coming through okay. Don't know what the heck happened. Just decided to crap out on us.
That says we're back.
We're back.
So, okay. But I mean, to finish that last topic of, I just don't think we're going to see a massive flood of foreclosures. And we're going to continue to watch these numbers because it all depends on where this is going to go. But one of the things what caused this problem, it was a virus. There is now a vaccine that's going at the very final stages to come out, to where there is light at the end of the tunnel now. And I would say it's more than light at the end of the tunnel. I think end of the tunnel is like they're entering stage 3. Now they're like, oh, now the efficiency rate came out at, if it's above 60%, we're good. And this thing's shooting up at mid-95%, mid-90s. So that's fantastic, to where now we start dealing with some of these repercussions and what happens. So we are coming out of this thing. It just, what happens in the next 12 to 18 months with dealing with the problems from this.
So Tommy over here, he's beating me to where I was going. But he says, remember that divorces will also blossom and mortgage failures due to the divorce. So that was going to be my point with all this, where people, I think if you're an investor and you're on the sidelines right now, waiting for this foreclosure boom that I believe all these false gurus and ignorant people are pushing, you're just on the sidelines.
Yeah.
But I think there's still opportunity for investments. You just got to be creative. And I think that's what we've seen lately with, so we've actually started doing some experimental marketing, and we're trying, some new things out, because the deals that we're getting from wholesalers are complete trash.
Oh.
These people do not know how to negotiate worth a damn. They don't know how to, and maybe it's not even negotiating. So I actually did a little test. I went on a Facebook group for wholesalers, and I put on there a question. I'm like, as a wholesaler, what is your formula to estimate repairs? I asked specifically, what is your formula? Because I know many of them use a formula, right? Which to me
let me guess. Their formula is, well, I got a contract, I got a price, so I just make the repairs
No.
to make the deal work.
You would actually be surprised. Some people had gotten very creative, like price per square foot for certain things. Like the AC was $6 a square foot. The roof, a foundation, I think foundation was $5 a square foot that you budget to redo foundation issues, plumbing. So, I mean, some of them got really elaborate. Some were very basic as to, well, if it needs cosmetic, it's $10 a square foot. If it needs major cosmetics, it's $20 a square foot. I think the most I saw, like if the house is trash, they went up to like $35 a square foot, right? So $35 a square foot for 1,000 square foot house that needs everything. That sounds about right.
I was like running my mind, like, define trashed.
No, they're talking about like you're redoing everything.
I know, but then when you look at some of, I just look at the houses we did over in by North Star Mall, Ridgeview area.
Right.
So we're like, those houses were 1,100, 1,200 square feet, and it's like we spent like 90 to 100 grand on each one of those houses.
The one that we walked out of, that we weren't even in there for 10 minutes and we left.
Yeah, well, I guess that's true. Like, that number, like, it was 1,000 square foot house, and he said $35,000, and that house was trash. But it's like, what is your definition of trash that you're using? Because I'm looking at this thing like, dude, this sheetrock's all got to come down. I have to add air conditioner. I have to rewire the entire house.
Yep.
Like, that's not gonna work. Like, you can spend 35 grand pretty quick if you got to do the air conditioner, the plumbing, and the roof. It's like, well, there went 15, 20, depending on how bad the plumbing gets with that foundation. Like, who knows where I'm using it for our Kisco property we did. Like, it was an 1,800 square foot house saying $5 a square foot. I was like, so what's that, 9 grand? Like, we spent like 17,000 on that because it was 47 piers and we had like 20 breakouts that we had to go through the foundation underneath the house and lift the whole thing up. It's like,
and that was more my point. Like, when I was looking at their formulas and everything, it was a research study for me, right? It was fun to do. I just wanted to see what the problem is. And it's just that they're using formulas, right? And I was like, you can't do that on a property because the age of the house is going to be a huge influence. If you're buying a house that's 1950s, right, and it needs everything, like, it's a lot more expensive to do that house than a 1980s, 90 house.
Yeah.
So it's like you're looking at all these things and you're looking at the formulas and it's like, you guys, you're screwing it up because you're not doing the right due diligence. And like we've talked about it before, if you're a wholesaler, you don't know what the hell you're doing, you need to go to these houses with investors.
Yeah.
Have them show you.
Oh, just
take the time to learn it.
When you said define everything, like, it's like in 1980 everything is different than in 1940 everything because of the systems you had to work with back then.
Yeah.
To where it's like rewiring a house. I don't need to rewire a house in the 80s, but you say it needs everything. If you say it needs everything in the 1940s, I'm like, I need to rewire that house.
Yeah.
And you're looking at 7, 8, 9 grand, depending on how big this house is to redo. And it's like, is there an air conditioner? It's not cheap to add an air conditioner because now you have to frame in a closet somewhere to add this thing if it's not there. That's why the houses we did were so expensive because we actually had to do structural framing to add in an AC closet to make it work. And then the chases to get it from one side of the house to the other because they weren't there because it ran off of window units. So, yeah, that's where
I actually did the math. I used their formulas on, I went, I think, like 5 or 6 of our last renovations. And the closest they got was $32,000 off using their numbers.
Wow.
I was like, because that's the problem, right? Unless, and I'm not talking about the one that I didn't put in there, Princess Diane, because that one was just lipstick, right? We didn't do much to it. But all the other ones that are real work, and I used all their numbers, for the extreme work, they were off on every
let's
single,
also say,
because
like-
it's like you can't use a formula on a house that needs that
And it's
much
not to
work.
say we're perfect or anything
No.
like that. To say like, okay, we may pay a premium for contractors, okay, but we're not paying a $32,000 premium either. These dudes aren't driving around in Ferraris to their job sites.
Well,
yeah, they got nice trucks
when
and stuff, but
our max rehab so far on those projects was, I believe, was like almost $100,000. So I mean, we're not, paying over a third over everything. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like, we're not. We could be over by $10,000 maybe, and I would even say, okay, 10, 15 grand. You're not that far off, right?
Yeah.
But 32 was the lowest. I was like, you're way the hell off. And that's the problem. So we go back to the same thing as going back to the marketing, going back to what Tommy was saying about divorces. You got to get creative in order to determine what is the real motivation from people right now, right? So it's perhaps downsizing, right? With all this uncertainty and everything, even though people want the room, but maybe you have people that are 2 or 3 people in the house living in a 2,500 square foot home. Right? Maybe they need to downsize. They're getting divorced. Divorce rates are going up because everybody being home, they realize they can't stand each other, being around each other that much. Divorce rates are going up. You have all of these things that it's causing motivation, right? If you're waiting on the sidelines, waiting for foreclosures, you're going to be waiting a very long time, in our opinion, right? Because I don't think those are coming anytime
and then
soon.
like I think the buyer pool is still there, especially in Texas. When you look at
for
the
sure.
economy we have, we're not shutting things down. The governor coming out saying we're not doing this.
Yeah.
To where it is sucking population and businesses from everywhere else to here. That I think you're going to be waiting a very long time. I mean, you go to some of these other states, you probably will have foreclosure crises of places that have been shut down, that have been lost to people, because there's nothing worse to a real estate market than a declining population.
Yeah.
So here we don't have that problem at all.
Yeah.
That we have a problem of too many people moving here and not enough housing to supply that influx of people.
Yeah.
So that's why you see so much development going on across our state, and especially here in San Antonio.
And then also, what's another distress that you can probably target is this, burned out landlords, right? I mean, this crisis, especially if they're out of state, if you have an out of state landlord that maybe they live in California, they might be struggling financially.
Yeah.
Where selling their house here might be a way that gives them some breathing room.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like you got to start thinking, okay, maybe it's not a distress in, let's say, San Antonio specifically. All right. But who owns the
San Antonio
houses?
homes aren't owned only by San Antonians.
San Antonians?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Like that word?
Yeah. Nice. San Antonians. How are my fellow San Antonians doing? So you got to think a little more creatively. You got to think a little more like, what are the stress signals that could be caused by people that own the house? What could be some situations that homeowners might be going through outside of just not being able to afford their mortgage? What could be, maybe moving for jobs, relocating, maybe a certain industry like here that we have tourism
Tommy
industry
makes
and all
a
that.
great point here where he goes, we are decoring our cities, spreading away from democratic urban centers. The job base is shifting internet remote from home just in time for 5G network. Imagine that. To where and then we covered it a couple weeks ago where companies in Silicon Valley are paying their people like, we'll pay you $20,000 to leave that place and go somewhere cheaper. It comes with a pay cut, but when you ran the numbers, they're still getting a massive pay increase because their dollar goes further in other places. So I think this is going to pull population away from dense, high-cost areas and spread things out. And when you look at Texas as a whole, it's like, we got a lot of room here. Like we're not bound by oceans and mountains and things that are in the way that make it structurally costly to build and develop.
And then one last thing to think about as far as, marketing strategies. Maybe you should be looking outside of Texas for distress, right? Maybe, you may not find the distress that you're looking for here in Texas because, maybe it's harder to find distressed homeowners.
What is that saying that the real estate guys always say? Like, live where you want to live, but invest where it makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if if they say that, then yes. That's exactly what you got to look at. You got to live wherever you want. It's one thing I always told my sister. I was like, look, as far as a job goes, do whatever you want and I'll teach you how to make money because a job doesn't mean that you're going to make money, right? It's a paycheck. But what you do to invest with that money, it's what Tommy was saying earlier about you pull your equity, you take that equity, you lend it out as hard money terms, you get higher interest for your money. That is making money with your money, right? And people don't understand that.
Make
They
your money
collect
work
a
as hard as you
paycheck.
do.
Yeah, they collect a paycheck that's in a 401k or some dumb shit like that, and they're like, I'm good. No, you're not. You're not.
Like you can't touch that.
Yeah,
like,
you're
well,
not.
You can, but
You get penalized all over the place. Yeah. So, I mean, I think you got to be smart with the way you manage your money, and you got to be smart with the way you look at marketing. And I'm not a person that I condone virtual wholesaling because we see how terrible virtual wholesaling is. So for those of you that don't know, virtual wholesaling is essentially you live in San Antonio, you do some marketing in some little town in Tennessee or something, you get a property under contract, and you wholesale it to somebody else, and you never left San Antonio. Our issue with that, my biggest issue with that, is we've seen it time and time again where you're doing this, you don't even know the quality of the home, you're getting on the contract for whatever price. I mean, there's no quality control at all.
It's too easy to screw somebody over, and unintentionally or intentionally.
Yeah. Well,
And
I think it's
there's
intentional if you're doing it, because if you're not doing it correctly, you're intentionally screwing somebody over because you didn't look at the house. You don't know the conditions of the house. Like, yes, again, it's always on the investor to do their due diligence, 1,000%. But I think as a wholesaler yourself, you gotta, in my opinion, have some integrity, some morals of saying,
Well, that's what I say. Like, I'm not against people making money.
No.
And if it works, hey, it works. But as you get more experience, you got to know better the USA, know better, do better. To where eventually you're going to figure it out. It's like, okay, this is just, I'm screwing somebody over here. It's like, but I'm making my $5,000. Like, don't do that. Like, you're a piece of shit in my mind if you intentionally screw people over. Like I see a lot of wholesalers do now. It's like all they worry about is get the contract as low as they can, build a big buyer's list, sell it as high as you can. That's their business model.
That's it.
It's like you're not an investor at that. But don't call yourself an investor then.
No.
It's like you're getting pretty.
You're
slummy
taking
and scammy
advantage
there.
of people's ignorance, people's lack of knowledge on investing and all that. And again, I agree, it's their fault, 100%.
Yeah.
But I believe, and we've always believed this ever since we started, and we've had tough times as we've grown our business, but we've always made sure that our morals and our virtues and the way we want to conduct our business always stay good, right? Yeah. Where we've never screwed somebody over just for the paycheck.
Yeah.
It was bigger reasons why we screwed them over. No, we never screwed anybody over.
Let's edit that out.
And especially for a paycheck. It's just not the way we operate. We don't feel that that's the right way to operate at all because, if you believe in karma or just whatever, it's like you're not becoming a real investor that way because you don't understand what the hell you're doing. You don't understand what's happening. All you know is that you got something under contract and some other idiot bought it. That's it. And you got paid. But you're not an investor. Don't call yourself an investor. You're not investing in shit. Now, if you want to do virtual wholesaling the right way, go set up a team in these places.
Well, and I also think time will tell and come to these people that are screwing people over. I think there is a little bit of karma that comes with that. And the reason this is working right now is because interest rates have fallen so damn far that it's pushed so much equity up. Like, there isn't any real value been created if you move out the interest rate adjustments on payments.
Yeah.
To where I'm curious what's going to be like if interest rates stop falling, because I don't know how the hell they can go much lower, but if they start to rise for any of the reasons we might have talked about or we've talked about in the past, is like that's when things are going to get dicey. Because that's where I was explaining to somebody that was talking about multifamily. And it's like, yeah, but your interest rates falling only help exponentially the price of what you can sell that thing to because it all comes down to the loan, the payment, the cap rate all plays into it. But if interest rates start to rise for that stuff, that is going to directly impact the value of those homes or those units, those multifamilies and stuff like that, to where a lot of these projections are based on value add and they're expecting appreciation out of these homes or out of these units, commercial or residential.
Yeah.
To where when those rates reverse or start rising, that's going to make those loans more expensive to get. To means that going to bring values down on those homes, which is going to hurt those returns, even all the way down to single family.
You're not going to be able to sell them.
And it's not going to be as sexy to be a real estate investor because it actually takes real knowledge now versus just getting lucky in the market pulling you out.
Yeah, and I think right now there are wholesalers that are getting lucky. and investors that are getting screwed. And the only ones that are making money are the people that, like you're saying, have real knowledge, are taking the time to educate themselves, are taking the time to understand the market, investing, the value of money. They're taking the time and not having that fear of missing out, like the real estate market is going to go somewhere. You know, people are still going to need houses. I'd rather you just take the time, educate yourself. If anything, work with somebody that knows more than you and learn from them. But somebody that actually knows what they're doing. If you want to flip houses, work with somebody that's flipping houses successfully, actually making money at flipping houses. Somebody that's a landlord that actually has properties and manages them, and it's profitable at managing properties. You know, not a landlord that right now is...
Ask the question. So what was the ARV when you started with this house?
Right.
Not what you sold it at, and what was your net profit then, minus what your appreciation aspect of it was, and I bet that's probably going to drop 10, 15 grand.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people are looking at that cash on cash return and that, you know, return on your money, but it's like you got to understand that there's a lot more to real estate investing than cash on cash return. There's appreciation, there's cash flow, there's depreciation. A lot of things play a factor in it. So when you're looking for those big paydays, you start missing all the other opportunities that really build wealth.
Yeah.
So, all right. So that's it for us today. We're going to wrap up here as we're hitting.
A long one.
Yeah, we're hitting the 2-hour mark. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Like always, you know, we do work really hard trying to bring the best value to you guys, making sure that you stay as informed as possible with everything that's happening in the market, the news, how it's going to impact you. I love the discussions on our comment board. You know, Tommy is a very active person, very, very smart person. And I believe, where was it? He did say somewhere where we can do this podcast, we can do the interview with him. Man, where did he say? Oh, we could do an assault podcast. So I'm curious to know what you mean by an assault podcast. Are we gonna go to some land somewhere and shoot some guns and do some interviews? I'm perfectly down with that. So with that being said, again, guys, put in the comment box, put in the chat box. Yes, if you want us to do this next Friday. We could potentially push it to 8:30 or 9 a.m. if that's a little better for you guys, if you want to sleep in a little bit. And if you're interested, put it in the comment box. If we don't hit 15 people that say they want it, we will not do it. We will just go ahead and take the week off. So if you want us here next Friday bringing you the news, let us know. And with that, we say goodbye and have a great weekend, guys.
Goodbye. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.